Hi, you've reached the voicemail of Hannah Brett with Connect Call. Just leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
1 for more options.
Hey, Hannah. This is that dad you spoke to about a month ago, who's now calling back, needing those resources. Again, no, I'm kidding. I mean, I did take some of those notes down, but I remember we were discussing, so, you know, a lot of programs have been recommended to us. The ones really kind of we're looking at are in California and Utah for our kiddo. We really want to get down to some more specifics, resources online that I can look to, to kind of whittle down some more of the information we wanted to know, and we wanted to compare between the programs like cost, insurance, staff to patient ratio, all that kind of stuff. If you can just get back to me and let me know what that was again, that would be great.
Hi, it's Hannah Brett with another episode of Connect Call, where I often say I do not have a clinical background, but I do have a PhD for picking up the phones with families in crisis. Jenney, I hope you like that. I was just telling Jenney Wilder here what a great tagline I had, but it's true. You know, a long time ago when I felt like doing this show and I was scared to, and I didn't feel like I was an expert because I didn't have a clinical background, this story coach I was working with told me, they said, well, actually, you are an expert. Very few people get that privilege of picking up the phone with all those families. And from all those years of doing that, I wanted to, do my job on a bigger platform where I could really connect families, viewers, listeners to all the best resources out there, and as well as answer a lot of questions. And why I wanted to have Jenney Wilder on my show today, who is the CEO, owner of what I call the Holy Grail in the Bible, all kinds of therapy. It's a listserv. And let me tell you just a little bit about Jenney. Jenney, and the rest of her bio you can see on the show notes. It's very impressive. But Jenney, who founded All Kinds of Therapy in 2015, founded it as she was closing her therapeutic educational consulting practice to build an unbiased resource families could actually trust. With an early career in Silicon Valley during the Web 1.0 era, and also because she's wonderfully diagnosed case of ADHD fueling her determination, she understood that the internet is the first place parents do turn to in crisis. And she was determined to build something worthy of that moment. And it's so true. I can sit here, Jenney, and talk to parents all day and say, do not go online. Do not go to the internet. And if you do, this is the only place I need you to go to.
Thank you.
But we do this in general. If we get sick or a loved one is sick, we hit the web, right?
Yeah.
And so finally there was this, for me as a marketer, as a rep over 20 years, I don't know how I came across All Kinds of Therapy. And we will explain a little bit more of what it is. But it is this beautiful compiled list of, and mind you, in the bio it says, which is true, this is built on Jenney's knowledge of visiting over like 500 schools and treatment providers around the country. And she has worked her tail off to really build this platform of ethical, good programs but really you filter everything into regions, the need of the client. I mean,
Thank you.
It's really just and so user-friendly, everybody. And I will constantly have All Kinds of Therapy on in my show notes, and we'll reference it because it is a resource for parents to use, or I can use, or anybody can use, and just go online. And it's, I've used it many, many times, and anytime I've pulled a program, provider, anything from it, they're all just amazing programs and doing the great work. So,
well, thank you, Hannah.
Thank God we have people like you.
What you're doing, not just with this podcast, but the fact that you can pick up the phone and answer the phone when someone calls, right? I started this website, so I never had to speak to a family again. I mean,
right.
Good on you.
No, but
for being
sometimes
able to do that.
I'll give families 20 minutes and then I'll be like, all right, can you just go to All Kinds of Therapy? No, I'm kidding. But no, but it's been so useful because I always say this in the work I do and helping, especially with adolescents and young adults over the years. I don't know everything. But what I've been fortunate enough to do is I'm a connector, hence Connect Call. And also I'm a collector and connector. So I've collected some of the best people in the industry that have struck a chord with me or resources that families can use that don't cost you anything.
Right.
but that you can utilize every day. And, you know, when I have families question whether a program is good or they're looking and they're not sure, I always say, well, let's double check. Let's go on all kinds of therapy and see what they say, you know? And
Well, I wanted a
it's
place for families to land that was like cars.com, right? Like these families
oh, I
are in
love
the
that.
middle of a crazy crisis, and I wanted them to be able to compare side by side. And that,
Yes.
um, when I started the work, you know, programs, treatment programs, boarding schools, you name it, they were FedExing brochures. I was this is terrible. And I worked in this wonderful practice that had a database, but it was only as good as it was last updated.
Right.
So, having worked in the web previous to switching careers, I was like, why isn't there a website where you can do this? So I had this idea in 2005, but I also recognized that I couldn't be a consultant and get money from treatment providers. Uh, Ethically, that didn't work for me. Me and my
No,
ethics getting in the way.
me too. Me too.
It's a
No, but
problem.
but it is. And I think, you know, listen, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, you know, uh, a lot of people, a lot of programs, you know, have good marketing and know how to market themselves and say that they're doing something maybe they're not doing. And so even in my role, you know, as I say to families to trust the people that I'm referring them to, it's taken me a really long time to compile that list of people I trust and I know are doing the good work for kids and for families. And over the years, you know, there have been other lists or this kind of webs, but there's nothing like all kinds of therapy.
Well, thank you.
And as the years have evolved, you've also evolved with the need, you know, with, you know, you're even now filtering based on insurance companies and who's paying for what.
I
Eh,
added accreditation because I wanted
Thank you.
families to know, even look, I understand just if you're Joint Commission accredited, COA, CARF, that doesn't mean that there can't be a problem at the provider, but it does
I've
mean that
spoken about that.
that
Yep.
programs are making sure that fire extinguishers are in the right place and that there are
Correct.
policies and procedures.
Correct.
And I put that at the top so that people could see so much of the website and everything about it is really to demystify the insider information that you and I know. We're speaking a different language when we get on the phone. It's
Right.
like, hey, this kid has
Right.
this, this, and this, and the parents have this, this, and this, and they're looking for X, Y, and Z, and they have this insurance. You know,
Right.
the insider baseball language that we speak to one another, I wanted to
Right.
bring that out. And I wanted partners who were willing to be that transparent.
Right.
So the
Right.
staffing ratios, parents don't know that when they're looking at a treatment
Right.
provider.
Right.
The staffing ratio is almost more important. How many hours do you
Thank
train
you.
that staff until they get on the floor? Like that
Yeah.
matters more than
Right.
almost, you know, the relationships. We know this from all the outcome data, right? The relationships that
Right.
staff have. And I would say to families when I was working with them as a consultant, you're going to be connected to the clinician. Your child is going to be connected to particular staff members. And it's
Right.
going to be a different experience that way.
Right. And that's why a couple episodes ago, and it was a really important episode for me. All of these episodes are, but one of the biggest ones for me was bringing on two heavy hitters in admissions, Curtis Gerard
I
from
heard
who
that.
used to
Yeah.
be with Visions and Jennifer Sawyer from Driftwood to really talk to admissions directors, because what was so frustrating for me representing programs was time and time again, parents weren't asking the right questions, nor did they know what questions to ask. And to me, the investment in treatment is just as important, if not more, than going to college or university or getting the new car. It's so, to me, none of that matters if you don't have your kids or your mental health in check and you're not okay, And I say to parents who just look at like the ticket, how much a treatment program is. I said, do you do that when you're looking at the colleges before they apply? No, you're visiting these colleges.
Right. And you're
You're
going through the
invested.
process.
You're going through the process. This is just as important, if not more. And having licensed, credentialed people working with your children, having a family program, having the right staff to patient ratio, a smaller milieu, all of these things are so important, and nobody knows how to ask these questions. So
Well, and
again, this is what
I have over 250 blogs, and I encourage anyone who's listening to go to the blog
wow.
section and type in questions. And the first blogs I wrote were in 2000, I think it was even before I launched the website, were all the questions that I used to give families that I was working with one-on-one. So questions to ask if you're looking at residential treatment, questions to ask if you're looking at wilderness therapy, questions to ask if you're a
Oh my
young
God, that's so
adult,
good.
because questions to ask if you're hiring a transport company. I mean, there's
Right.
a big boom.
Or an interventionist,
Yes. Or if you're
what's
hiring an intervention, like there's a blog that's actually got this really long title that the families can ask the questions, because even when you're hiring a professional or you're touring a program or you're whatever you're doing,
right.
it's really hard to hold on to all of the things that you
Right.
want to ask while you're in crisis, while your kiddo's struggling.
Which I get. But yet they were really quick to hire Alex, the recovery coach. They met at an AA meeting, right? And I'm like, what qualifications does this guy have? How much is he charging? And you're still paying him as we are talking. And I am telling you, for the same amount of money, if not less, I am going to hand deliver somebody who is licensed, who isn't going to mess this up for you, right? And it's just, that's been very frustrating for me and I will stress this on every episode, is the work that we do, especially in behavioral health, mental health, addiction. It's the only, you don't find this when someone has physical ailments or medical needs, right? It's only with us where we're talking about the brain, the disease of the brain, where parents and families will say, I got this. Thank you for your help, but I can do this on my own. And I'm like, you don't do that when you break your leg, or if you're in the middle of chemo and your doctor says things are going well, you don't step back and go, all right, we're going to stop right now. We're going to pull back on that now, because this is what you know what I mean? It's amazing to me.
Like we're at the right spot. That's what the families used to say. And I'm like, yeah, so
we're doing good. We can pull back. We don't need to keep this going, and it's why I find it, and I don't mean to shame families with it, but I really do look to how my mother was. And my mother, I always say this to parents, there's no way you can love your kid more than my mom loved me, but she was real quick to pick up on, as smart as she was a teacher and she knew a lot, and she tried to mother me with a lot of stuff. She knew right away, I can't fix this. I can't help you. I can't mom this away. I'm going to have to hire professionals and look to the professionals for clinical supervision and follow their lead and not listen to my kid, because, and I'm like, if my mom can do it, why can't everybody else do it?
Right.
I just don't understand that.
I think it's really hard for families.
And by the way, to the listeners, we haven't even started the questions. I mean, this is how great we are, Jenney and I together. Go on, Jenney.
You're very kind. I think what's amazing about, and this is one of the reasons when I started the website, I didn't have the experts section, because I realized I could not have these conversations anymore. I wanted the families to get served, but I couldn't be the one answering the questions. And not every expert, and that's the section of my website, or consultant, interventionist, transporter, neuropsych, is the same kind of person. And I wanted people who were going to be in that area of the website who would be transparent with what they can and
Yes.
can't do.
Thank you.
Like knowing their lane, and not everyone knows
Yes.
their lane professionally. And
Nope.
luckily for me, I've always known my lane because fundamentally
Yep.
I'm
Me too.
an
Mhm.
insecure human who's like, no, that's not my skill set. And that's why I didn't have a lot of addiction and recovery when I first started the website.
Right.
I have a handful of people, including yourself, who I am calling and being like,
Right.
is this a good
Is this a
program
good
to
right.
have on the website? Because it
Right.
wasn't my skill set. I have a blog written by the wonderful, God rest his soul, Adam McLean, who
Yeah.
helped me understand. I was like, we were talking one day about interventions. I was like, what is the history of and he rambled it off. I'm like, yeah, so can you put that in writing for me?
Get in a
And
blog.
that's one
Yeah.
of the blogs that still
Yeah.
gets a ton of traffic, because
Right.
I'm all about, I was a history major. Like, I love context, and then I can
Right.
understand where things fit.
Well, that's also something, I love over the years, someone mentored me in being a connector. And I try to mentor the youth today who are representing programs. And first thing I say to a lot of them is, don't let your ego get in the way. You don't know everything. And the worst thing you can do for a family is thinking you do and not getting out of the way. And so I am the first one to refer on to the experts who were licensed, who have the credentials, who were doing the good work and were helping and not hurting people,
Absolutely. There are so many different niches. When I was consulting, and then when I started the website, I didn't know about Christian treatment. You and I have talked about this
Yeah.
offline before.
Yeah.
And I got in touch with a consultant who specialized in that and
Right.
had a conversation, got to know that person, which put me in touch with a treatment provider that is an advertising partner of mine now, who's helped me
Right.
write blogs about this and understand that market that is
Right.
not just Christian, it is treatment first and
Right.
foremost.
With a
and
clinical
treatment,
foundation.
yes,
Yeah.
with the
Thank you.
underpinnings. And I think you and I come at this from a perspective of a rising tide raises all ships. We like to talk about tides. I live in Maine. It's like we got to.
No, but I say this all the time because I do have a lot of parents, and I am not anti-faith based. What I am anti is any treatment where there isn't a clinical foundation, where there isn't there. I mean, I'm telling you right now, and any program that doesn't have mastered level, whatever staff, that I have nothing against God or Christ or faith-based treatment. What I'm against, and we will get into this as well, is, and I think you'll be able to clarify this a little bit more for me as well, is I get a little scared when I see the words behavioral modification, or, I don't see this clinical foundation. I say to these parents, as much as I may pray and look to my God in times of need, I promise you, when someone like myself or a loved one gets sick, we go to a doctor first, right? And that's the way we have to look at mental health and addiction and everything we're dealing with. We can't just look to the church. And if more people could understand that, there are tons of programs out there where there is a great clinical foundation and they are faith-based, and that is great. But there's also a lot of programs where I wouldn't send because there isn't a good clinical foundation. And that's not just faith-based programs. That's just in general. There's programs out there.
There are so many programs that I'm like, wait, what? Who's that?
Right.
Early on when I launched the website, I have a monthly newsletter that comes along with it, and I was gathering email addresses. This is when I was actually on top of who was on the mailing list, and there was someone from the FBI. And then I, of course, being a proper person who grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, afraid of
Right.
government, believing in lawyers and insurance companies, I looked into who this person was, and they were investigating a treatment provider in the state that they were based in. And I was like, okay, it's a good thing that this person is subscribed to my newsletter. I want them to hear the things that are happening on a monthly basis that are more positive than and transparent, and this level of transparency that I think didn't always exist in
Right.
the behavioral health space, mental health space. It's like there was
Right.
a whole lot of information probably in the 80s and 90s that wasn't talked about, that was
Right.
happening.
Like like when we would send a child who was questioning their sexuality or gender to a program where, it was behavioral modification. And to me, I'm like, be transparent. What are you trying to say? Like, are we trying to change who they are? Um, because I've read reviews on certain treatment programs where I've seen a mother say, my son Nicholas wanted to be Alexis, but thank God we found this program because Nicholas came home to us. And I was like, danger. What
Yeah,
is that?
right.
That's conversion therapy. Hello. And I want people to be transparent. I want to know who you are and what you're doing. And I wish again, and I'm glad I only have control of my podcast and I am here to educate. But as I say before, I wish our industry had something like, Wall Street has the SEC, and somebody like Bernie Madoff comes around and we crank up the rules and regulations to make sure none of that continues. Right. And
Right.
I wish we had some policing of that nature for treatment
It's
because we are.
it's a fascinating problem. Like Google had put in legit script certified programs, right, for Google to try to
Right.
control some of this stuff that was happening
Right.
there. And people have come to me and say, you're not legit script certified. I'm like, well, I don't advertise on Google. Like I do things differently.
Right.
But there is no overarching, like looking at, and this is, it gets all into states' rights, and each one of these states regulates totally differently. Like Utah is highly regulated environment because it has a
Right.
lot of providers. There are other states that have no regs. So there
Right.
is no state regulation. So when I was consulting, I would be like, okay, but do you have some sort of national accreditation, just so you're answering to those higher things?
Right.
NASAP has had research, what was it called? RDP, research designated programs, and I
Right.
believe NATAP has research designated programs. And
Right.
ideally, that research is being done by the third party.
Right.
But families don't know that when they're looking. They're like, oh, look at the outcomes from this treatment
No.
provider. It's like, they did their own.
No, and the last episode I just did with Derek Daly about the wilderness program, what's been really sad is, and I'm not denying it didn't happen to her and it's happened to kids, is because this program wasn't overseen by anybody, is, Paris Hilton's story was true. It did happen. But that doesn't mean that a lot of these programs still exist or we should, all the good treatment for adolescents or young adults should be lumped into that is the, bad treatment
And it's
and
changed. It's evolved. I
it's
mean, it
changed.
is there are so many treatment providers in Utah. When I got into this work in 2005, I was amazed at the volume of treatment providers that were started by people who had worked at X, Y, or Z. There were a couple of companies at that time, treatment providers, and they had come out of that and they said, we started this program because we believe in relationship-based therapy and this, and we wanted to do smaller, and we wanted to do recreation therapy built in, and
And not hurt kids.
and not hurt kids, and really have relationships on a professional level, train staff to this level, and recognize that kids don't finish a treatment program with like a bow on them. I mean, I think that was
Right.
the thing that I used to think, oh, we got to keep a young person, in this
Mm-mm.
program. Well, no, they need their family. And that's another shift
Right.
that's happened, is there's
Right.
so many more
Right.
residential programs that really much more incorporate families. That
Right.
one of my, to go back to like one of the programs that I'm thinking about, they had news in my newsletter last month that
By the way, everybody, we haven't even started the questions. Get
I
ready,
know.
buckle in. Continue. This is what's great about Jenny and I. We
Like,
go completely rogue, but I love
so
it.
one of
And
my
we both have
partners,
ADHD really
not
badly.
at all,
It's like-
totally fine. Just got away from behavior modification, and they deal with some, neuro spicy kiddos. And they've gotten away from it, and their whole news item was all about, basically after 30 years, like, we're changing the way we've been doing this for a while, but now we're really announcing it. We're leaning into changing the way we're working with our population, and it's
And
amazing.
I don't and I'll say this, like, because I've said this also when I've had an interventionist or two on my podcast, and I'm also going to be having some really good licensed credentialed transports. I recognized early in my career when I would hear of the snatch and grab in the middle of the night with kids to go to treatment or wilderness, I was like, ooh, that doesn't sit well with me. And it doesn't. And what I mean by snatch and grab is there is an approach that some transports use where they literally, which I think is the most traumatizing thing, they will come to your child in the middle of the night and just awaken them in the sleep and kind of kidnap them into treatment. And listen, you're never going to have a kid or adult, willing to do this, right? But there's also a humane way of doing this. And I feel
and that
like
has evolved and changed
so much.
so much.
I feel like my role in the work I do, and thank God for the career I've had, but also because of me, and I talk about this on episodes, personally struggled with my depression. I have had to, I've been in a psych hold. I have, been, 1013'd in my career. All this stuff has happened, and as horrible and tragic as it's been at times and really just bad, I've also been able to look in the mirror and say, no, this is good, because now I get to walk in the shoes of a kid who might say, Mom, if you send me, I'm going to kill myself. And they put them in this hold. And those holds are appropriate when, you really do have a child hurting themselves or wanting to hurt somebody else. But if not, those experiences can be really traumatic. And it makes it even harder for the kid to accept the peanut butter on the pill or to really buy into the treatment because they've already been traumatized. Like, I can only imagine if somebody pulled me out of my sleep to bring me somewhere as a kid or as an adult, it's going to take a real long time for me to trust anybody. Right.
Well, and I go back to having, I totally agree with what you're saying.
And I also feel like if the transport, I'm going to say this, for a transport interventionist that does that, do your job. Like, I feel like it's the lazy approach. You know what I mean?
And
like,
there was a time where the conversations couldn't be had. The parents weren't willing to have the conversation.
All right, Jenney, I'm going to go with the first question. I guess going on what we were talking about before, with the treatment landscape being so overwhelming, how can families begin to narrow down the right level of care? Like, what are the biggest mistakes families make that you know of? And just, if they are not working
with a professional,
if they're working with a provider or not, like, what are, how can they really?
I think the biggest mistake that families make is being afraid when they're interviewing, being afraid to ask the questions of the providers that they're speaking to that their heart makes them feel uncomfortable with, right? We're really bad as a culture, as a country, internationally, of asking the tough questions. So
what are the tough questions families are typically afraid to ask? I know money's a big thing, but
the first question that every family wants to know is
right.
How much does this cost, right? That's what they search on the internet for.
Right.
And so if you're not going to put that on your website, then you better have a pretty good explanation that's going to drive people to pick up the phone and call you. But about what's the thing that they're most afraid of, I think asking the question of what happens, how will I know if this is working? Because that is so subjective. This is mental health. It's not there is no clear answer to that. And if a provider says, well, we'll do this, and then this will happen.
Right.
I'd run, not walk away from that provider.
Right. And I want to just, stress this as well, that, and again, I use this as an analogy all the time, and I don't mean to, but it's the truth. I was just saying this before with a family member who is going through cancer treatment. And the thing with cancer, which is a doozy, is you'll never get upfront, this is going to happen in this treatment, and then on this date, they're going to be better with this. They're going to go from stage 3 to stage 1. It depends on every doctor's visit. It depends on how that patient takes to the treatment, whether it's chemo, antibodies, you name it. And we have to do these check-ins, right? But and nobody's ever kind of fixed, right? And it's kind of the same when we are talking about treatment. And I stress this: the 30-day model, again, was really designed by the military years ago. I think that's what I read.
Yeah, that's what I heard
because
too. That's what I learned too.
That was their time of leave. But even the movie 28 Days, nothing really says 28 days is the check be all end all. Everybody is different. And so much so that, when I went to treatment the second time after doing only 30 days the first time, I remember looking to my mom going, "How long do I need to stay?" And she goes, "How long's a piece of string?" And I was like, "What? That's a horrible answer." But it was the truth. It depended on how my mother was going to show up, how I was going to show up. And everybody's different. They're a snowflake.
And doesn't the outcome for long-term recovery show up as if you're sober for a year, then you have a much better shot? So
right. And we're talking about with mental health too, I say this, a responsible treatment facility, a therapeutic consultant, provider will educate the families and say, please don't dump your money all into this first phase of treatment, because we're going to be looking at treatment through the first year. Meaning, and what I mean by treatment is if your kid or somebody needs to go to residential treatment, then we're looking at what aftercare looks like, which is really important. We're looking at their therapy. We're looking at your treatment. And this isn't a fix. This is kind of, years later, I have relapses with my depression, but all the years of treatment and things that I have learned is now I know I have this toolbox when things kind of pop up for me, what to do. And, these kids, these adults, anybody who we're looking for, even our parents who are designed the way they are, they didn't decide who they were like overnight. We can't expect their kids to, change overnight.
Totally.
This is, if you think about it, when you have to go learn a new language, that doesn't take 30 days, And
when I would sit with families, I'd say, I don't know how old you are, parents, but it took you 45, 55 years to get to this point. Your kiddo's going to shift gears a heck of a lot faster. Look at me. I didn't swear on your podcast.
You can swear.
Oh, thanks. Be careful.
We go for it. You can say anything. I won't censor you.
Yeah. But the young person's going to always change faster. They just don't have those embedded struggles. And the bad
But
habits.
they'll also, I'm getting so excited talking to Jenney. I'm like, we could do this all day. They will also change faster if the family is invested and doing work as well. And I think the biggest struggle I know I've had when I've worked for adolescent and young adult programs, it's not per se having the kids change and evolve. It's really getting the families to learn the new messaging and to get the help they need. And I can't stress this enough. If for any parent out there, especially if we're talking about kids, even a wife, a husband, a loved one, if you are putting your loved one into treatment and thinking we're going to just drop them off and we're going to fix them and they're going to be good, you're sorely mistaken. It won't work this way. It just doesn't.
The identified patient model, thank goodness, at least in the world that I'm operating in, and maybe that's why I'm working in this field. I gravitate towards the providers that are going to be transparent, that are going to look at the whole system. The amount of workshops that are out there for families, for individuals, for like family therapy vacation. There was like an article a year or so ago in the Wall Street Journal. Families are spending money doing family therapy vacations. Like, it's a thing that finally the system as a whole, we've come to terms with. We're not going to send the kid. We're not going to pick the kid up in the middle of the night, send them away. We got to work on the whole system. And that's what everyone seems to be kind of doing now, much more so than even 7 years ago.
I mean,
any
I had a mother
who's not doing that work is like a runaway.
And if you're working with with all due respect, if you're working with case management or you're working with an interventionist or a therapeutic consultant, and in the upcoming episodes, I'm going to tell you the difference between an educational consultant and what a therapeutic consultant is. But if you are working with any of these providers and they're not holding you to getting and doing your own treatment, you are working with the wrong person. It is uncomfortable. It's not fun. But if you're asking your child and loved one to do this, you can't ask your kids to change and evolve. And without, everybody needs to work on themselves. And guess what? All that will happen is you all will become a better version of yourself.
Things get uncomfortable. A lot of families will hit the road and they use these insurance-driven short-term residential programs as really a respite.
Right.
From their kiddo and not doing any of the work.
Not every parent, and I will say the cool thing about treatment today is back in the day, all we had was Al-Anon. Today, there's so many more options. There's so many parent support groups where I even know of a slew, and I need to put this on my show notes, a slew of treatment centers where you don't have to have a loved one in their treatment to be a part of the Zoom parent support. So you don't feel alone. And I have to ask, if you are so resistant to that, there's a problem.
Right.
What's going on?
What in your own anxious state is preventing? I've had those conversations because I only now talk to friends and family. And I'm like, and unfortunately, when a friend calls, this, way too much. You're like, hey, I remember when you did
No,
this?
I say to my friends today, I go, remember in college how my voice was so much higher? Now it's like this, like so deep, because it's been like, I have, and I'll say this, a lot of times I'll be on the phone with families where I'm fighting for their kids' survival more than they are. And that's when I have to get off the phone. If I have to literally have my veins popping out of my neck to tell you this isn't the right program, or you all need to be partaking in this, that, and the other, and you're not doing it, I got to go. You know what I mean? You've called me for resources and recommendations, but you're literally, I say go left and you're going right. And I'm giving you all of this. Not saying I'm 100.
And then the measure of success, how families measure for success. Yes, there's hopefully outcomes data with whatever treatment provider a family is using. That's always the best case scenario. But success to me when I was consulting was that the family system would struggle and get through it without ever thinking that I was not part of it. And there are professionals who want to be remembered for all of eternity. And I was not one of them. I'm like, if I was doing my job right, we're going to set you on this path and you all are going to continue to have the highs and the lows of that 4-letter word of life. And I will, you will have that and you may or may not remember me. That's success.
No, which is so great. And this is why I respect you so much.
To plug my website, that's what I want all kinds of therapy to be. I want it to be a safe place to land, to demystify this crazy universe. I see families coming back time and again. And to do research, what's amazing to me is they'll do research and the average length of stay on a page is way longer than a typical website. And then they don't always click into that provider's website because they're getting a ton of information and then they're continuing to gather data. Whether they jump on Reddit to find something negative or they go on another web directory to find different reviews, sometimes it's just a confirmation bias of that professional referred me to this website, to a provider, and I'm just gathering all the data that I can.
You really are.
Making these decisions is incredibly hard. Yeah.
Right. And I say two things to parents. I try to, if you're going to hit the web, even though I tell you maybe just hold on for a second, but if you're going to hit the web, I'm going to make it easy for you. Just go to all kinds of therapy.
Thank you.
That's it. And then I also say, if you read bad reviews about a program, typically we're dealing with adolescents or young adults, 9 times out of 10, those bad reviews are from kids in treatment who've been able now to access a computer. I know this because we saw it every day. It was rare to get a parent. And yes, there are some bad reviews by parents.
One of my partners said to me, we had
I don't even know. I don't even know I got balloons on this.
That was amazing.
It's a party.
It's a
party.
It's a party on Connect Call. One of my providers told me it was a young adult, they had access to the internet and they were live Google reviewing the program while in treatment. It was, and the program, to their credit, was like, keep doing it. Yep.
Right.
This is part of your process.
Yeah. I am tuning in from the UK, hence why we have a British phone now behind me instead of the American phone for viewers who are questioning the decal. So I just wanted to say that. When
I first started this work, I was so much more prescriptive. When I was consulting, I was like, we got to go from here to here. We got to talk to the young person would come in and meet. And I was really transparent, like, you're here because something's not working. What's not working? And if this isn't going to change, then things need to change. And I was helping a family through that process. I think one of the problems with the internet and the world post-COVID is there is so much information that families can glean digitally that they think they're all experts. And it's hard. Life is so much more complex.
And that goes into the next question beautifully, in that what separates high quality treatment versus a treatment program that has the dollars to really market themselves to be something they're maybe not.
Yeah.
I know that the first thing that has driven me crazy is over the years, I'll even Google a treatment center, right? And the first line where it says title of the treatment center, I'll click it for the contact number, and that 800 number I'll call, and it's not that program. It's a different program. And I'm like, what? And I know to make the difference, but for a lot of families, they don't. And so I guess, how does one decipher between good marketing and what is actually good?
Yeah. I mean, I have had partners on my website that are no longer partners and will buy ads above all kinds of therapy. So if you do a Google search for all kinds of therapy, you'll see treatment providers that might not be partnered with my website, but they know that there's value.
They're very healthy.
Yeah.
Very healthy individuals. Yeah. That's what they're doing during the day. There you go.
and Google, to their credit, they'll take the dollars. And so how do you know if it's a good treatment center? You have to continue to ask why this goes back to that other question of ask the hard questions, because it is a muscle that families in crisis need to get used to asking. Why does your treatment program always come up because the algorithm is feeding them the information?
Right.
I mean,
what are 2 or 3 good hard questions? And we're going to put this in the show notes. What are 2 or 3 good or 2 questions that families right out the gate should ask to decipher between good treatment and good marketing?
Good treatment.
No pressure.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Go.
I think the staffing ratio.
Yes.
This is kind of in tandem with the staffing ratio. Is how long do you train your staff before they're in front of students? That varies widely. So that's because most marketers or admissions people don't know the answer to that.
I want to get through a couple more of these questions. And I will definitely be having Jenney Wilder back on Connect Call. She is a big reason also. You are a big reason why I'm doing this podcast, because, the few times I did talk to Jenney about this, she's like, do it.
Yeah, I love podcasts.
Do it. And there's a lot of
person.
podcasts in our industry. No disrespect to anybody else doing it. Go after it. But a lot of times it's a lot of people just wanting to hear their own voice and not really interviewing people for the right. And I wanted to just, again, be a free kind of, we need you to subscribe, but I wanted you to be a resource. I wanted this to be a resource for families and to really deal with topics that nobody was really talking about. I guess my next question would be I will say this time and time again, parents often feel guilty, ashamed, or like they failed. What do you tell parents? Because I get it all day long. Especially I get a mom first on the phone. She is crying to me about, my kid beautiful and smart. And like, we did this and we did that and we put him in this school. And there's just and a lot of times there's so much shame and guilt in your child. And we're going to go with children as well as adults getting treatment because that it is keeping you from actually doing it. And or you think this is a bad or sad thing to happen. I personally think anytime we can intervene on anyone with their mental health to make them and your family better is an opportunity to become better. It is not a sad or bad thing. I wish I was intervened on at 16. We could have saved me years of struggle, and saved a lot of money, and so what do you say when you're talking to a family and they're riddled with shame and guilt about this, that they're making these calls?
I think the piece is that they're not alone. I mean, that is the lead story that we have so much shame. And when you talk to someone who is an adult who has done their work, whether it's at on-site doing one of their intensives or whatever it is, as a young person to adult, and it's very possible a young person could end up in treatment again later in life. It's like they're doing the work and they're able to put their shit on the table and talk about it.
Right.
My favorite thing was to hear how many young people would get into the amount of colleges that they would get into from a treatment program that they graduated from in high school. And quite honestly, get a bunch of money too, because they're going to write the essay that's actually truly from the heart. And their hardest thing is that they're looking for other people to connect to who are authentic. And I think, that's why I love the collegiate recovery programs and the high school recovery programs. Like, I think that those places are magical in terms of helping young people kind of move along and truly be authentic and honest. So
we're gonna talk about that more on another episode for people that don't know. And I say this because when I worked at a young adult or adolescent program, typically if we had a young person leaving college to come to treatment, ideally what we would be doing is I remember when they were just starting out, but now every state has at least one or two colleges or universities and really big schools from
the huge party
Alabama.
Schools all have it. Like Danny Conroy helped start the one in Boulder. It's like
a recovery campus on campus is kind of like this underbelly on the DL kind of support for kids who are not using substances or, not wanting to party or needing help with their mental health on campus. And I think it's so important. I mean, I even read something somewhere, and I could be wrong. And if I am wrong, someone needs to tell me I was wrong. But I read no, I'm not going to say names because that's their anonymity. But a big football coach from a really big SEC school actually donated a ton of money to that school for just having a sober fraternity because their loved ones were getting sober, and he wanted a place for these kids. And it is, I think it's awesome. And a lot of parents don't know about this.
Texas Tech was the first one, and they literally wrote the book on it and hand it to any university that wants to start another one. And and the collegiate and the high school recovery program, like they're going to open one here in Maine, way up in the top of the state, like where the potatoes happen, and it's a part of the state that needs it, and it's so powerful. Here we only have 1.4 million people in this whole state, so the fact that we're going to have a high school recovery program is just amazing to me.
It's so important, and I'll say this, and I've said this on other episodes with the shame and the guilt. A big reason, I am such an advocate for kids and children, I think is not just because I do this professionally, but because personally, I have struggled my whole life with this treatment-resistant depression. And I know what it's like to have suicidal ideation. I know what it's like to feel like there's no hope. And so when I see, especially with the kids out there who have unfortunately taken their lives, right? Because they felt like there was nowhere else to go. And then to see in their obituaries or to see it mentioned that they suddenly passed and we are not saying what it is, we're doing everybody a disservice, including your child, because for them to die in vain in that way, in that we could help other kids. You know what I mean? Like,
I
that's
felt
why
that way when Prince died. I was like, why are we not saying
it what it is?
Yeah.
You know, and when you also share your story, it gives people permission to share theirs. And so it's a powerful, powerful piece. And I think as a parent, you're not a bad parent that any of this is happening. Where I kind of question parenting is when you have all this information and you choose not to do anything with it, or you're so afraid of what your neighbors are going to think that you don't do anything. That's a disservice, I think, to you and your family. We are wrapping out of time, Jenney, but I always like to end the show with this last question. No pressure. If you were on the phone with a family today, in the work that you do today, or with all kinds of therapy or whatever thing, and you're just talking to a friend, let's say, and you've talked to them a lot on the phone, but is there any parting words that you really want them to hear more than anything else when they get off that phone call? What would it be?
Oh my God. I think, where do you want your child, young person to be in 20 years?
Right.
We don't want that kid in the basement or not alive.
Right. And we want them living their life.
Totally.
And doing their journey. I have a lot of parents who have their ideas of what their kids' lives should be. And that's really also hurt their kids, is, to get out of the way and let them just be happy and healthy, you know?
Yeah. So it's kind of asking a parent or friend to future trip a little bit and think about what that is in the future that they want and how are they going to help their kiddo get there. The same way we overthought the first foods these kids ate.
Right. Right.
We totally, as parents, overthink that stuff. And then we underthink what we can do to help sometimes, or don't give ourselves permission to be uncomfortable with those same things. It's like when your child's learning to walk, cheering for them when they fall a little bit and get themselves up. Like, that's the piece that I hope for my friends who have young people who are struggling.
Thank you. Or I often like to say to families where they're uncomfortable with their kids being uncomfortable, find out why that is, that you can't have your child be uncomfortable,
It's so hard. Yeah.
It's so hard. This also comes from someone, I'm such a hypocrite. I only have a dog. And if I had to crate train my dog, I'd be like, I couldn't handle it. If they were crying, I'd be like, no, you're uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable.
I'm
Let's
right
go.
there in the crate with you.
Yeah, I'm right in there. I would have been. All right. Well, I can just say,
thank you, Hannah.
I want to thank you. I'm just reminding everybody, this is Connect Call. This has been another amazing episode, I think. Please tune in to my show notes where we're going to have all kinds of therapy on there, and we will continue to show the website because I think it's such a valuable tool for families and people. Also, subscribe. Please download and
to
subscribe.
Her podcast. It's so good.
Please, guys. This is another episode, and tune in next week. All right. Thanks again. Bye, Jenney.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Connect Call. As we conclude, remember that insights shared are intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly recommend consulting a qualified medical health professional or healthcare provider for personalized advice tailored to your unique needs. Your mental health journey is important, and having the right support is essential. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or require immediate assistance, please reach out to a mental health provider or emergency services in your area. We're grateful to have you as part of our community, and your well-being remains our priority. So follow us on social media to stay connected, and be sure to catch one of our episodes on our YouTube channel. We're here to support you every step of the way.